Over the past few months, I've been reviewing every Doctor Who story starring Sylvester McCoy as the Seventh Doctor. He started out as a bit of a clown, constantly falling over, mixing up his words, and playing the spoons at every opportunity. But he soon developed into a much darker and more mysterious character than the Doctor had been in many years. Full of secrets and ruthlessly manipulating friends and enemies alike in order to achieve his goals, while still remaining likeable enough for viewers to want to continue following his adventures. It's a tricky balancing act, but McCoy manages to pull it off. Unfortunately, the show was cancelled after his 12th story, so in this video I'm going to be looking back through all of his stories and ranking them from worst to best. At 12, Time And The Rani. This was his debut story, and it did not work on any level. Post-regeneration, the Doctor was at his most confused, clowning around more than he ever did afterwards. Plus he was saddled with Bonnie Langford as a companion, screaming her head off anytime somebody looked at her in a funny way, and Kate O'Mara playing the Rani as a pantomime evil queen. The only bright spots come in when she impersonates Bonnie. Plus there are the Tetraps, big furry monsters who aren't scary at all. One of Doctor Who's worst ever stories. At 11, Dragonfire. It looks terrible, with a whole planet made of snow and ice, built in the studio out of plastic. And there's one of the show's worst cliffhangers, as the Doctor dangles over a cliff for no apparent reason. Plus there's a monster who might have looked scary in the shadows, but not so much under the bright studio lights. Still, it did introduce Sophie Aldred as Ace, the definitive companion of the Seventh Doctor, and she makes an immediate impression here, although she doesn't really get time to bond with the Doctor until later episodes. At 10, Silver Nemesis, the show's official 25th anniversary story. It looks decent enough with location filming in and around Windsor Castle, but the story is a bit of a mess, with too many storylines crammed into a very short running time. At least 3 different sets of bad guys all falling over each other to get their hands on the statue of the title. Even the Cybermen feel like a bit of an afterthought and are taken down far too easily. And the writer appears to believe that the Doctor is actually God, which suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of the entire show. At 9, Delta and the Bannermen. A strong first part with lots of fun 1950s period detail, but by the end it's turned into a dull run around, and the central human-alien romance is never given enough screen time to be convincing. There are some good parts. Ken Dodd's cameo is brief but fun. Don Henderson is a strong villain, and the Doctor has a good confrontation scene with him, but overall it's rather average. At 8, The Happiness Patrol. This is where it starts to get good, with the tried and tested story of the Doctor landing on an alien world and taking down the corrupt government within a matter of hours. It's a standard Doctor Who story, but it's done with style. The world has a distinct look and feel, making the most of its studio setting for once. And the guest cast are generally impressive all round. So not bad at all. At 7, Paradise Towers. Another bringing down the system story, this time set in the tower block, populated with all kinds of memorable characters, and a witty script with a satirical edge. It's let down by the enemies, a slow-moving robot that are supposed to be terrifying but aren't, and Richard Brye's performance when possessed by the evil alien in the final part is notoriously terrible. But apart from that, it's a decent watch. At 6, Battlefield. The weakest of the final season, but still pretty good. Bringing back the Brigadier and giving him one last big adventure, as well as reinventing UNIT for the modern era. Again, there are some excellent guest stars with Jean Marsh as Morgaine and Angela Bruce as Brigadier Barbera, and there were lots of good action scenes, but the whole backstory is left rather vague, which is a bit annoying. At 5, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. Another planet full of weird eccentric characters, played by great guest stars, and a surprising reveal about the identity of the true evil force. The Doctor gets some strong scenes facing off against the bad guys, and Ace gets to overcome her fears, so it's pretty solid overall. At 4, Survival. The final story in the original run of the show. Ending it on a high with the Doctor battling a feral master on a dying planet. Plus we have Ace coming to terms with her past, and all the Perivale scenes point towards the 21st century version of the show, with alien threats on a recognisable present-day Earth. So it's very much ahead of its time. At 3, The Curse of Fenric. But really the whole top 3 are about as good as Doctor Who gets. There's really not much to choose between them. Fenric is obviously one of the best, wonderfully written, full of great characters, and with huge amounts of character development for both the Doctor and Ace. It's definitely one of the classics. At 2, Remembrance of the Daleks. The best Dalek story in years, with 2 different sets of Daleks unleashed on 1960s London, and the Doctor digging up an ancient Time Lord weapon to use against them, ultimately blowing up Skaro in possibly his biggest act of mass murder. It was one of the first stories that showed this Doctor wasn't just a clown, he was a ruthless plotter, and also the first to show his relationship with Ace, who memorably bashes several Daleks to death with her baseball bats. And at number 1, Ghost Light. Not everybody's cup of tea. It takes a few watches to really get to grips with it, but it's definitely worth it, and for me it's up there as one of the best Doctor Who stories. It's another cast full of eccentric and memorable characters, all with their own secrets to be explored, and a complex and literate script, with the Doctor at his most plotting and Ace put through the psychological rigour. It's an exquisite piece of work all around. So that's my top 12. If you want full reviews of any of these stories, then just look back through my channel. There are, of course, many other stories starring Sylvester McCoy as the Doctor, particularly in the audio dramas from Big Finish, and I'll be reviewing some of those on this channel in a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, join my Patreon if you want to read my thoughts on the ones I've reviewed so far. Next week on this channel, I'll be doing a look back through all of Classic Who, where I'll be recommending the best and worst stories from each era, as a kind of final word on the classic series. See you then.